Welcome back to Magic Muggle, a Harry Potter after show. This is Eric Cicada, your host, aka Mr. Honest, your favorite Ravenclaw, broadcasting from the highest tower up in Hogwarts. Today, we're covering the Goblet of Fire, chapters 9 and 10, another 2-chapter episode. These books are going to change the format of this show, and we just go along with it, not trying to cramp, not in a hurry. We just want to get through the story in beats that are faithful to the material. So these 2 chapters coincide, are kind of rhythm and rhyme, and then the next 3 will be onward back again to 3 chapters. But I'm going to say we're going to be going through this a lot in the show, which is exciting. So today we're talking about 9 and 10, the Dark Mark and Mayhem at the Ministry. And these 2 chapters, they really are a match set. Chapter 9 is the attack, the terror, the chaos, the mask off moment where the wizarding world remembers what it used to be like. And chapter 10 is the morning after, the spin, the panic, the official statements, the cleanup. The way institutions react when they're scared. There's still little bits of humor and quirkiness like all the chapters of Harry Potter, so it's not full on dark, at least not yet in this book. If chapter 9 is the night innocent breaks, chapter 10 is the moment everyone starts asking, okay, who's going to be blamed for this? All right. Without further ado, let's talk about Chapter 9, The Dark Mark. We start exactly where we left off, the World Cup afterglow. People are pouring out of the stadium, singing and celebrating, leprechauns zipping overhead. The Weasleys get back to the tents, everyone's wired, and nobody wants to sleep, so Mr. Weasley agrees to one last cup of cocoa. Oh my goodness, cocoa is good to muggles and wizards. We could finally meet on some ground here. And it's warm, it's safe, it's family. They're arguing about the match, laughing, reliving Crumb's plays. And it's only when Ginny falls asleep at the table and spills her hot chocolate everywhere that Mr. Weasley finally says, all right, bed, enough. Harry climbs into his bunk, staring at the tent ceiling, still watching the little lanterns glow past overhead. And he's replaying Crumb's moves in his head. He's imagining himself flying. He's imagining himself among the crowd at the World Cup, roaring his name. He's imagining the joy version of a stadium. And the reason I'm focusing on that is because Rowling is intentionally giving us comfort before she flips the switch. Because suddenly, Harry doesn't know even if he was asleep or not, and he hears Mr. Weasley shouting to get up. Ron, Harry, now, this is urgent. The sounds outside have changed clearly. The singing is gone, replaced with screams, running footsteps, and panic. Mr. Weasley doesn't even let them fully dress. He says, grab a jacket and get outside. And the scene Harry walks into is one of the darkest in the series. People are fleeing into the woods. There's panic. There's a tight crowd of wizards marching across the field, wands pointed upward, hooded, masked, and high above them, floating like puppets, a Muggle family. This is a dark picture, especially for this series, probably the darkest of this series, because the only reason they're holding Muggles is because there's discrimination against Muggles and what they call mudbloods. I mean, I couldn't even say that on here if we were over at Hogwarts and real Hogwarts, you know. Mr. Roberts, the campsite manager, and what looks like his wife and kids. They're being controlled and flipped and spun in the air like it's entertainment. And below them, the masked wizards are jeering and laughing. Not battle cries, not takeover speeches, just cruelty. Ron's reaction is simple and honestly perfect. That's sick. And I usually say that sick is a good thing, but he was literally saying that is sick. Because it is. It's the kind of evil that doesn't even pretend to have a purpose. Then the adult Weasleys go into emergency mode. Bill, Charlie, and Percy come sprinting out with sleeves rolled up and wands out. And Mr. Weasley tells the kids, get into the woods, stick together, I'll come find you when it's sorted. So the kids run. And the woods become chaos, darkness, blundering silhouettes, crying children, people pushing into each other because nobody can see. Ron trips, Hermione uses Lumos, and as soon as the wand light appears, Draco Malfoy is there, relaxed, leaning against a tree, watching it all like a show. And he immediately turns it into something ugly. He warns Ron basically that they should keep moving because they're after Muggles. And he points at Hermione and implies that she'll be targeted too. This is worrying to even the reader. Then he drops the slur, mudblood, of course, and Ron nearly loses it. And Harry snaps back with one of his best lines in the chapter. Where are your parents? Out there wearing masks, are they? Malfoy doesn't deny it. He just smiles. If they were, I wouldn't tell you. And that is just such a clean window into the Malfoy family. Smugness as armor, cruelty as status, and danger treated like a joke. They keep moving, trying to find Fred, George, and Ginny. And that's when Harry realizes the worst possible thing in this moment. His wand is gone. He searches his pockets. Nothing, just omninoculars. And you could feel the vulnerability hit him. In this world, your wand is your safety, your voice, and your defense. And then Winky appears. God bless Winky. Fighting her way out of the bushes. Moving like an invisible force is restraining her, and she's panicked. She's squeaking about bad wizards and people in the air. And Hermione immediately calls it what it is. House self-control. Magical punishment. The raw deal they get. Maybe not at the best time, but she's calling it slavery because it is. And that is disturbing a bit, too, among all the craziness. And Ron does what Ron does early in this series. He repeats the system like it's normal. And Hermione refuses to let it be normal. They keep going, and past goblins, laughing over gold, totally unbothered, and then Vila surrounded by wizards acting like idiots, bragging, exaggerating, posturing. And it would be funny if it wasn't happening in the middle of terror. And they reach a clearing and it's quiet. Harry says that they can wait because they'll hear anyone coming from here. And that's when the moment happens. Footsteps. Silence. Harry calls out, and then a voice from the darkness says a spell. Morse Mortar. Might be saying that wrong. Something vast and green erupts into the sky. At first, Ron thinks it's another leprechaun formation, and then they see it clearly. It's a giant skull made of emerald stars with a serpent tongue. The symbol hanging over the woods like a neon threat. Hermione turns white. She says it's the dark mark, Harry. You know whose sign. And instantly the woods erupt with screaming because that symbol isn't just a shape. It means murder. It means torture. It means the worst time in living memory. You know, I find it even a little bit daunting at this point in this series that they still call him you-know-who. Harry was brave enough to call him for what he was, Voldemort, in the very first book, but the wizarding world is still mourning, and that's what mass PTSD is. Voldemort is pure evil, and that is such a sign that they can't even name his name still. And before they can run, 20 wizards apparate into the clearing and point wands at Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Harry yells, "Duck," and 20 voices roar, "Stupefy!" Red light blasts past them into a crossfire, and then Mr. Weasley's voice cuts through. "Stop, that is my son." Mr. Crouch steps forward, and he's furious. He's demanding to know who conjured the mark. Hermione shakily explains it. It came from behind the trees, a deeper voice. Not hers, not Harry's, and not Ron's. And then Amos Diggory, father of Cedric, pushes into the darkness and returns with someone unconscious. Winky. And then it gets complicated because Amos says she was holding a wand, and Harry recognizes it immediately. It's his wand. He says it out loud, "That's mine." And Amos briefly swings suspicion toward Harry, like, is this a confession? Mr. Weasley shuts it down instantly, because come on. Then Amos uses Prior Incantato, and the ghost of the spell appears. Yes, there is a spell that can reveal the last spell a wand produced. The ghost of the spell does appear, which is the dark mark, and meaning Harry's wand was used to cast it. But Hermione points out what matters. The voice was deeper, human, and not Winky. And Mr. Weasley lays out the logic. The real caster could have used Harry's wand to avoid betraying their own, then ditched it. Winky picked it up at the wrong moment. And now we hit the cruelest part. Mr. Crouch doesn't handle Winky like a frightened being. She's a slave to him, and he handles her like a stain. He says she disobeyed him, and that means clothes. Which, for a house elf, if you remember, is basically exile. However, we didn't really ever see it from this perspective because Dobby would have done anything to get away from the Malfoys. Winky collapses, begging, not clothes. Hermione protests. She was terrified. She was trying to get away. You can't punish her for fear. But Crouch doesn't care, not even a little. He says he has no use for a house elf who disobeys orders. She was supposed to stay in the tent. And the chilling part is, it's not about truth, it's about control. It's about reputation. Then Mr. Weasley gets the kids out of there. Back to the tents. Everyone's shaken. Bill is bleeding. Charlie's torn up. Percy's got a bloody nose. I hate bloody noses. And they debrief what happened. Ron finally asks what the audience is asking. Why is everyone so terrified of this skull? Mr. Weasley explains it with weight. The dark mark hasn't been seen in 13 years. And when it was seen, it meant bodies and it meant death. It meant that you were about to walk into a house and find something you could never unsee. And Bill explains who they were. Death Eaters. Voldemort supporters. And then there's a question that hangs over the whole ending. If the masked attackers were Death Eaters, why did they flee when the dark mark appeared? Bill explains because many of them denied involvement when Voldemort fell. They claimed they were forced and they were returned to normal life. They got the lucky card played. If Voldemort actually came back, they'd have a reason to be afraid of him too. And as Harry lies in his bunk afterward, he can't sleep. It's the complete opposite of the last time he laid down in that exact bed. Because 3 days ago, his scar hurt. And tonight, the dark mark returned. And the wizarding world is starting to feel like it's tilting towards something. And that brings us directly into Chapter 10, Mayhem at the Ministry. Chapter 10 begins with a hard pivot. Mr. Weasley wakes them up only after a few hours. He packs up the tents with magic and gets everyone out as fast as possible. They pass Mr. Roberts, now dazed and blank, waving and saying, "Merry Christmas." I mean, if you remember, he was the one being floated up in the sky with his poor family. And Mr. Weasley explains that memory modification can do that, disorient you, especially when what you're forced to forget is huge. They reach the port keys, and it's basically evacuation energy. People are frantic and desperate to leave. The Weasleys get back to Stoat's Head Hill before sunrise and then walk home in exhausted silence. And when the burrow comes into view, Molly Weasley is outside waiting in slippers, pale and strained, clutching the Daily Prophet. She hugs Arthur and the paper falls and Harry sees the headline. Scenes of terror at the Quidditch World Cup. There's a photo of the dark mark. This consumed the whole event. The big, awesome Quidditch World Cup that we witnessed not chapter ago was pretty much overseen by this whole thing. This is very, very scary in the wizarding world because the dark mark, it's a sign of Voldemort. So nobody really knows how to quite take it. Molly grabs Fred and George and hugs them so tight that their heads bang together. And she starts sobbing, saying she shouted at them before they left. And she's been thinking, what if you know who got you? And the last thing I said to you was about your owls, the wizarding test. It's one of the most human moments in the series. Because it's not about magic, it's about regret, it's about love. Inside the kitchen, Hermione makes Molly strong tea, and Arthur adds a shot of fire whiskey because, yes, obviously, Arthur reads the paper. Ministry blunders, culprit not apprehended, national disgrace, and of course, it's Rita Skeeter. Percy gets furious defending the ministry, ranting about regulations and guidelines, and Bill, exhausted, just tells Percy to shut up, which is one of the best sibling lines ever. Understandable if you have a sibling. Arthur finds himself quoted indirectly, a ministry official who said nobody was hurt but refused more info. And Rita prints rumor bait about the bodies removed from the woods. Arthur is exasperated because now rumors will explode even more. And he says he has to go into work to smooth things over. Percy insists he's going to go too because Mr. Crouch will need all hands on deck. Molly is upset. Arthur is supposed to be on holiday, but Arthur admits he thinks he made things worse. Now, while all that adult chaos is happening, Harry asks Molly if Hedwig has come with a letter. No post at all. He's just waiting to hear from Sirius, and it'd be great to get something comforting right now. So Harry pulls Ron and Hermione upstairs and tells them what he hasn't said yet. His scar hurt again on Saturday morning. Hermione panics instantly, and Ron is stunned because the last time Harry's scar did this, Voldemort was nearby. Harry says that he wasn't on Privet Drive, but he was dreaming about Voldemort and Wormtail. They were plotting to kill someone. Ron tries to call it a nightmare, but Harry says what he really means. My scar hurts, and then 3 days later, Death Eaters march, and the dark mark appears again. It's a pattern. Harry also brings up Trelawney's prophecy, not because Harry is gullible, but because last year it wasn't just nonsense. She went into a real trance and said Voldemort would rise again because his servant would return to him. And that same night, Wormtail escaped. Harry tells them he wrote Sirius, and that's why he's asking about Hedwig. He's waiting. Hermione points out Hedwig might have to fly across the world, for all they know. But Harry can't stop looking at that empty sky, because waiting for help when you feel the world changing is a special kind of dread. Then, of all things, Ron suggests Quidditch. Hermione thinks it's insensitive, but Harry says he still wants to play. And honestly, I get it. Because for Harry, flying, it's just not fun, it's control. It's breathing, and it's one space where fear can't pin him down. He's in his comfort zone when he's playing Quidditch. That's probably why he's so good at it. Then the chapter jumps through a week. Arthur and Percy are never home. The ministry is flooded with complaints. Howlers arriving. Demands for compensation. Ruined property claims. I love the Howlers. I love that they brought that back up because they're so annoying. I can't imagine getting a Howler in front of people, like an embarrassing. It's not really, wouldn't be embarrassing like in my life personally, though. I think people would find it pretty fascinating, maybe even a little bit like disturbing. Like, wow, what the heck are you playing over your Bluetooth speaker? I'd be like, this is a magic letter, sir. I'm to do with magic. I am Honest of Ravenclaw, and never mind. This is about Harry's story. The Howlers demanded compensation for ruined property claims, and then we see the Weasley clock again. Not a time clock, a danger clock. Hands pointing to home and work. Traveling, hospital, lost, prison, and mortal peril. Arthur's hand is constantly pointing to work. Molly says he hasn't had to do weekends since Voldemort's era. And the signal, the ministry, is scared again. Then we get the cozy burrow scene. Rain against the window. Hermione studying spells. Harry polishing the firebolt. Fred and George whispering over parchment. Molly suspects that they're plotting again. Fred emotionally blackmails her in the funniest way possible. If the Hogwarts Express crashed and we died, how would you feel knowing that the last thing we heard from you was an unfounded accusation? Everyone laughs, including Molly. Then Arthur arrives home exhausted, saying that the fat's in the fire now. I don't know if I've ever heard that phrase before, but I like it. Rita Skeeter has been hunting more mess-ups, and now she just found out that Bertha Jorkins is missing. Tomorrow's headline. Yikes. We know Bertha. She was in that first opening chapter, the one that Harry had a vision of. And yes, she was indeed admittedly dead. And nobody has decided to go looking for her up until the moment that her being missing is reported. That's sloppy. Arthur says Bagman should have looked for her ages ago. Percy defends Crouch. Arthur says Crouch is lucky that Rita hadn't found out about Winky, because that would be headlines for weeks. Hermione points out that Crouch is lucky the prophet doesn't know how cruel he is to house elves. We could see that this is taking a very personal toll on Hermione, and I actually really respect that out of her. And Percy kind of goes against it and says officials don't deserve disobedience. Hermione says slave, and Molly cuts it off and sends everyone upstairs to pack. And in the final scene, Pidgewiggin is freaking out with excitement because trunks are open and Hedwig's cage is still empty. Harry worries what if Sirius has been caught. Ron says it would have been in the Prophet, and the Ministry would brag. It would definitely cover up some of the current stories being printed. Harry tries to believe that. And then we end on comedy, because it's comedy that still feels real. Ron discovers his dress robes. Yes, dress robes, maroon velvet lace, looking like something that crawled out of a haunted attic. Molly tells him that dress robes are on the Hogwarts list of things they need. Ron says he'll go naked rather than wearing these, and Molly tells Harry to take a picture if he does. I'm pretty sure she actually told him to take a picture of him in the dress robe, because it's still funny to her. And, you know, we really need a little comedy after all that drama. Door slam. Pidgewiggin starts choking on an owl treat. Ron frees his beak and mutters, "Why is everything I own rubbish?" And that's the perfect last note, because it reminds you, even in a story about terror and politics and dark symbols, there's still kids still broke, still growing, still being dragged into a world that's about to get bigger than them. And that's Goblet of Fire, chapters 9 and 10, The Dark Mark and Mayhem at the Ministry. This is the moment where the series stops pretending the danger is gone, and I love how Rowling shows us the two sides of it, the terror in the field and the bureaucratic chaos afterward. Because the fight isn't only wands and masks, sometimes it's rumor, sometimes it's headlines, and sometimes it's who gets blamed and who gets protected. Next time, we'll move forward with the story, but the air is different now. Because Voldemort's symbol is back in the sky, and Harry's scar is acting like an alarm. Now, before I go, a quick call to action. It would mean the world to me if you could rate this show wherever you're listening. It helps it get more ears, and we want as many people listening for this journey as possible. We're getting into the good part, and we have a good bingeable 20-something episodes now. So share it with a friend, rate it. It would mean a world. And if you want to hang with me outside the show and talk Harry Potter, Marvel, or Twitch streams and get updates when the episodes drop, join our Honest Verse Discord. I'll put the link right in the description. Jump in, choose your roles. You could pick Magic Muggle, Marvel Maniac, and Twitch crew, or just Magic Muggle if you only want the Harry Potter announcements. And come say hi. And if you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot if you followed the show, left a rating, and shared it, like I said, with another Harry Potter fan who just loves chapters and loves this deeper conversation. Well, I am pretty full after those 2 chapters. It's interesting having 2 chapter episodes because that means we're prolonging our time in the podcast, which I gotta say, I love doing this podcast, and I don't mind being here just a little bit longer. Thank you for listening, and until next time, wands down, hearts full.